that I would be doing a rebuttal, so most of my comments really are about Dad. But it is nice to know that Dave thinks of me both as an older brother and as well as a golf mentor.
Whoa!
And a tennis teacher.
Yeah. A lot of you probably think of, when you think of Dad, you think of his finer qualities. Some of you may not know that some of his qualities aren't so good. So I thought I would highlight those. One of my greatest memories as a kid was going to hockey games in Toronto. We went to lots and lots of hockey games. Dad's work afforded him the opportunity to go to lots of hockey games in Maple Leaf Gardens. And going to hockey games with Dad was a joy, but also an incredible embarrassment. And the reason was because Dad would take with him a huge bag of peanuts, and these were peanuts in the shell, right? And Dad would sit there from the very, very beginning and be eating these peanuts, and instead of sweeping the peanut shells underneath his chair, as probably most of you might do, he would just sort of let them sort of remember Pigpen? Sort of there's peanut shells everywhere, and of course, somebody has to get up and go to the washroom. You stand up to let them through, and you hear crack, crack, crack. And I'm kind of going, oh my God. So anyway, so neatness wasn't one of Dad's qualities. A lot of you, particularly if you sat with Dad in any kind of the board, or when Dad held positions, and I'm assuming you probably hold a position with the chapter now, do you not? As an extraordinary member, something. Dad's held many positions. He's well above average anyway. But you think that if you've ever seen him at a meeting, you know that he holds Robert's rules close to his heart, and he's very, very organized. And some might call it organized, and some might call it anal, really, because another memory as a child was when we used to get ready to go for a car trip. You know, remember, Barb, we'd get ready to go for a car trip, and about an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 45 minutes before the car trip, we would go out and see Dad organizing the trunk. And literally, he would organize the trunk for about an hour and a half for a 45-minute car ride. It was true. And although I'm sure you probably think Dad has a real honest streak, you weren't there when he was trying to sneak Barb and I into Pinecrest Speedway by telling us to crouch, so that we could go in as like under 7 years old, and we were like 14. It's true. It's neat. You saw a picture of Hal, and many of you guys have known Hal Jordan. Of course, the neat story about Hal, of course, was that not only did he sing with Dad, but Hal was the very, very first baritone in my very first quartet, in Hal's Angels, which as Barb said, was a great name. The quartet sadly didn't last long because Hal had kind of an interesting way of describing our bass. He called him Numbnuts the Brownie. Didn't last long. Not long. Dad over the years did, though, provide a lot of advice. You saw, obviously, I've been in many quartets, and Dad always had some sage advice for us. But it was always the same advice, interestingly. He always would tell me not to frown. That was his only advice. And it was interesting that Mom's only advice to Dad was to quit barbershop. And it's not because she hated barbershop, it's because she loved music. And unfortunately, that's a true story. But anyway, happy birthday, Dad, and happy birthday, Mark.